Welcome back, fight fans. We're back. I'm back in my regular spot. I've got the mic. Everything's all good, you know? Nice to be back. And we've also got a pretty short one today, actually. It's just the recap of UFC Vegas 61. That was just last Saturday. Mackenzie Dern, Xiaonan. And that's it. There's no more contender series going on. There's no show this Saturday, so we don't have that. So it's going to be a short one. And then of course next week we're back to, well, another short one where we'll just be talking about prepping for UFC Vegas 62. And I can't remember who's headlining that right now, but I do remember. Oh yeah, that's right. It was Alexa Grasso and somebody else that I do not actually remember. I like Alexa Grasso, so I remember that part of it for sure. Okay, so, but that's next week. Right now, of course, we're going to be talking about UFC Vegas 61, Mackenzie Dern, Yan Xiaonan. Let's get right into it. It was supposed to be a little bit longer of a card, but sadly, we had a couple of late cancellations there. Also, a lot of first round finishes. So, it was actually a pretty short card, really, in terms of the action, which means it's actually going to be a much shorter show today because there's a lot of first round finishes. So there's not really much for me to say. And the first one was actually one of those first round finishes, but it was an interesting one. Guido Cannetti and Randy Costa. Um, Costa being the fairly significant favorite going into this for good reason. Well, maybe not. Apparently, I guess, because Costa doing fairly well, but he was finished a couple times just before this. But I think kind of all of us kind of thought, oh, okay, it's fair because he's going against all these top tier guys. I think was Davy Grant. I think Davy Grant was one of them. I don't know. He's been in some pretty crazy fights. Oh, Adrian Yanez, I'm pretty sure was one of them. So, it seemed pretty fair to think that he was going to walk away with the win fairly easily. Well, not fairly easily necessarily. I thought it was going to maybe lean towards a decision or maybe some kind of a middle length, middle of the range kind of TKO there for Costa. But you can't uh, oh my god, what was I gonna say? This is the problem. You can't underestimate, that's where I was gonna say. You can't underestimate Guido Cannetti, and that's what we found out. And I mean, he did that in his last fight too. Should have taken him more seriously, clearly. Uh, Costa started to pressure early, walked Cannetti down. Cannetti standing his ground pretty well, using a lot of kicks, which was working pretty well, let's just say that. And then one of the kicks actually made Costa stumble backwards, and then Cannetti actually just jumped on him. Costa really didn't see it coming at all. Uh, and before he even really hit the ground, I don't even think they hit the ground. Cannetti had already had that submission locked it in so deep that Costa had no time to defend anything at all, and then just tapped. Yeah, just an amazing. I mean, honestly, there's nothing else to say. I mean, just a really impressive win. I mean, I ended up giving him the most valuable fighter bonus. I mean, he came into this 42. I actually gave him the same bonus last time for the exact same reason. I mean, he's 42. I don't like to make a huge deal about age, but he was a pretty significant significant number of years older than Randy Costa. And other than that last win over the guy who got destroyed by Suga, now I can't remember his name either. The guy with the green hair, you know who I'm talking about. That's who Guido Cannetti beat on the last time. Um, you know, uh, I wasn't expecting it to happen to Costa, that's for sure. But you know what? Should have taken him more seriously because, like I said, when I looked at it after, it was like, you know what? Costa's record, not that great, and he's been finished a couple times. And then Guido Cannetti also finished his last opponent. So it's actually really not that crazy that this happened, but still, it definitely deserves recognition. I mean, when you're that much older than somebody and you're kind of like, this is your last run. He even said that in his post fight interview that, he's got to make this time count. And I mean, how much more could you make your time count? I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to do that. The perfect performance. Absolutely incredible. I think he just kind of caught Costa off guard. I don't think, I mean, clearly he was not expecting to be defending a submission like that right away, like that. And that's what you got to do. I mean, that's why he got the most valuable fighter, in my opinion, of the night there. The second fight, Chelsea Chandler, Julius, or I think it's Julia. Is it Yulia or Julia? Julia Stoliarenko. I'm gonna go with Julia. um, and actually, I went with Julia on the way in, but you know what? I was thrown off by the last one. I will freely admit. Well, actually, I mean, by the way, I want to say first off, too, I should have said this earlier. I got every single one of the prelims wrong except for one. But I got every single one of the main card right. So it was a bit of a weird night for me. And just in general, it was a bit of a weird night as well, with, of course, Cannetti. And then this could have gone either way. And the next one could have gone either way too. There's a lot that could have gone either way, and they just all went in the opposite direction that I would have thought. And they were pretty much all underdogs that won for the most part on not the undercard, the prelims on the card. So definitely some unexpected results, but still quite the card. Anyway, back to the action. Chelsea Chandler, Julia Stoliarenko. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was just kind of thrown off by how well Stoliarenko did last time. So I thought, okay, debuting fighter, not necessarily the most experienced, not necessarily the best performances, at least on paper. So for Chandler, so I was kind of leaning towards Stoliarenko. I mean, she's got all the armbar wins. Chandler, not necessarily a ground kind of person. So I thought, okay, I'll go with Stoliarenko. But like I said, I did think that this could have gone either way. This wasn't like the last one where I just clearly overestimated the ability of Costa for sure. But anyway, Stoliarenko was trying pretty hard early, but Chandler, who by the way was much bigger, stood her ground, landed some big shots. And I mean, really, that was kind of the huge difference in this fight was Chandler's size. I mean, yeah, definitely much bigger, and it definitely helped her for, well, as long as this fight lasted. And of course, the aggressiveness definitely helped as well. Stoliarenko went for a takedown, and she actually did lock in that armbar. So, I mean, it was looking good for Stoliarenko right away. But right away, that kind of stopped. That ended in about, what was it, like 30 seconds or something like that. Then reversed by Chandler, landed a lot of ground and pound. Interestingly, went back to her feet after that. I thought that was a bit weird considering she was clearly winning on the ground. I think that was a bit of a, well, I mean, you could say missed opportunity, but she did end up winning in the first round anyway. But maybe she could have won 30 seconds earlier or something if she would have stayed on the ground. Seems like a bit of a weird choice when you're clearly dominating her on the ground like that. But anyway, went back to her feet, landed a couple of heavy combos anyway, so still doing a bunch of damage. And at that point, as I said, Stoliarenko was really struggling with the size of Chandler. Stoliarenko did go for a couple more takedowns. At that point, it's like, I think you're kind of on the end of your rope at that point. If you're picking to go against somebody who already go to the ground against somebody who already reversed you and almost finished you with ground and pound. And then Chandler found herself on top again, slammed down more of that ground and pound, and that was it for the first round finish. Dominant performance, clearly from Chelsea. Chelsea Chandler. And you know what? I mean, there's really not a whole lot of. I believe she was actually more on the side of featherweight because she had a hard time cutting down to bantamweight. Actually, I don't. I think they ended up fighting at 140 from what I remember. So very much more so a featherweight. I mean, again, this is one of those things. It's like you're starting to get more and more people that cannot make bantamweight. You know, you've got Fior, who clearly cannot make bantamweight. I mean, Chiasson, sorry, not Fior. You got Chiasson, who clearly cannot make bantamweight. I mean, she already moved the fight with Aldana up. We saw that at the pay per view. Same thing with Wolf. She is huge, huge. Dumont maybe, could keep going down to bantamweight, but she also probably is more so into that featherweight range, and then you just got rid of Lad for a similar thing. Because it was revealed that she was actually fully cut from the UFC for not making weight 4 or 5 times. Um, it's like you're gonna start having problems like that with somebody like Chandler as well. I just don't understand the point. I mean, and Lad was kind of I don't know if she was necessarily a crowd draw, but she's definitely one of those younger female fighters that does have a little bit of a following. So it just seemed kind of insane really to keep pushing her into that situation and then punishing her for basically not having a featherweight division. I just don't want to see that to happen to somebody like Chelsea Chandler, who is also, you know, younger, just kind of, just starting in the UFC clearly. And, clearly not really more of a bantamweight, more so a featherweight. I just don't want to see that. It just sucks to continuously see that happen. So, I mean, I hope that that doesn't happen here, but it's rough. It sucks to see all this kind of stuff happen. You just want it to work out. You want them to just fight at the normal weight that they feel comfortable fighting at, and then that's it. And I just don't see why it's that hard to make that happen. I just don't understand. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. The first one that we talked about last time for the prelims, Brendan Allen, Christoph Jotko. Actually, I think that might have been on the main card before. There was a whole bunch of switches to the schedule of the card, the way this worked out. So I actually ended up having 3 prelims. Even though one of those was on, they were just a lot of moving around. Because I think I only had 2 on the broadcast last time, but then they all got swapped around. So I ended up having 3 in the prelims on the actual card, and then 5 for the main card. Anyway, the first one of those was Brendan Allen, Christoph Jotko, another first round finish. By the way, we're actually talking quite a bit, and we're only in the 3rd fight, and they've all been first round finishes. So maybe let's pick it up a little bit. I'll try and do that. Brendan Allen, Christoph Jotko. I was going Jotko going into this, but honestly, this was another one where I knew it could go either way. It really could, because both of these guys are very, very similar in how they fight and how they've been doing actually too. So I was going Jotko by decision. Neither one of these guys really gets a whole bunch of finishes, so I was a little surprised this ended in the first round. Let's see what happened here. A lot of kicks coming from Allen. And really, that's exactly what happened to Jotko. Allen landed a kick. Oh, actually, no, never mind. I was going to say he knocked Jotko down with a kick, but he did not. Allen actually ended up down on the canvas because of a kick, and Jotko ended up on top of him. Allen then went for a pretty nasty submission, actually, but then started to get smothered by Jotko there. Was looking pretty good for us people that picked Jotko, that's for sure. And then after a bit of waiting, Allen exploded because clearly he was waiting for Jotko to either tire out or maybe catch him off guard there. And that's exactly what happened. He actually exploded, reversed him, found himself on top. Pretty impressive, honestly, to watch. And then the next couple of minutes, all Allen overwhelmed Jotko with his strength, and then eventually actually took his back, went for the rear naked choke there, and quickly made him tap. Pretty impressive finish, honestly. I did not see that one coming. Well, not like that anyway. I could have definitely seen Allen winning over the long run, or maybe even a submission in the second or third round. But first round like that, I did not see that one coming at all. Again, another fairly unexpected result there, but very, very impressive for Brendan Allen. And, I'm a little bit more impressed, I got to say, because I just have not been impressed at all with how Brendan Allen has been fighting recently. It's just been bizarre to watch. And honestly, he didn't even really deserve to win the Malkoon fight. So I just, it's been weird to watch. But this one, very, very impressive. I was definitely impressed by this one for sure. Next fight, Joaquim Silva, Jesse Ronson, one of our Canadians. Definitely not one of the ones that I was going to pick for a win. And this was actually the prelim that I did get right. Anyway, the action was a little slow to start as the round went on, though. It was still pretty much anybody's round to take. I mean, when it's that slow to open, but Ronson may have actually ended up on top of the cards there. He got a couple of heavy combos. The activity kind of looked like Ronson was taking the lead, and then Silva closed with a knockdown. And really, I mean, excuse me, with a knockdown like that, it was pretty brutal. And he almost actually won the fight within the last 10 seconds of the round. And I mean, normally you kind of give it to the person that was kind of edging ahead the rest of the round. But with a knockdown like that, I agree with what the announcers were saying, and they gave it to Silva on this one. And I mean, like I said, it's all about the damage. So when you got damage like that, when you almost won the fight in the last 10 seconds of the first round there, you're getting the round on the card. So that's how I had it, up 1-0 for Joaquim Silva. And then Ronson did come back in pretty heavy, clearly knew that he needed to, get the momentum back after that. And it was dead even for the first couple of minutes, just like that first round. And that's when Silva was really actually starting to switch up his stances, which you don't normally see a whole lot, but it was really, really throwing Ronson off. You could tell every time he was switching and then striking, he was landing everything at that point. And I'm not even sure it actually, you couldn't really tell if Ronson even knew what was happening, actually. Like, you really couldn't tell if he noticed that he was starting to switch stances like that, because he just seemed kind of confused because he kept getting hit and he was like, what is happening right now? Because I guess he had worked on the timing and the look so much for the other stance that when he switched it, he just he didn't seem to really fully understand what was happening at that point. And he could not adjust to that whatsoever. And that's actually what ended up getting him the win there. He disguised a knee with those switches, landed it, dropped Ronson on his back, and then ground and pound all the way to the end. That was it. So yeah, really impressive win for Joaquim Silva. Amazing adjustment there. And he even said, he even thanked his coaches for that, which, I mean, yeah, you definitely should, because I don't know, it wasn't looking good when he was just in that other stance the whole time. So as soon as he started switching, he got the win like that, which you don't normally see. That's very, very impressive, especially in terms of corner work like that. Crazy to see. Then we had another prelim, which I really don't think this was one of the prelims originally. Maybe it was. Actually, I think it was the featured prelim. Anyway, Alexei Olenek and Ilir Latifi. Who knows what's going to happen in matchups like this? I mean, really, both of them basically at the end of their career. They're heavyweights too. They're also veterans. They've also had weird records recently. Latifi also hasn't fought in a while. He hasn't really been fighting much at all the past few years. So there were so many questions going into this. Had no idea. I was saying, though, because Olenek was more active, plus he's got all that skill on the ground, I kind of figured he would actually get a submission win here. I mean, he did it to Vandera pretty easily, too. So I thought it was pretty reasonable to think that he's got a pretty good chance of doing it again here. But that is not what happened. That is not what happened at all. This was the first decision of the night. Uh, and it was a pretty, I don't want to be mean, but it was a boring fight to watch. It was rough. It was rough to watch, to be honest. It was not an entertaining fight by any means, and it was honestly just kind of frustrating to see really that play out like that. It was just kind of okay, like, and I mean, really, the whole story of it was Latifi was basically just finding himself on top. Olenek couldn't get any of his submissions going, which just meant that Latifi was pretty much laying on top of him, trying to control him. Wasn't really doing a whole lot of damage, but Olenek couldn't really get anything going at all. And that's really what happened all 3 rounds. There's nothing really else to say because nothing else really happened. Olenek locked in a couple of ones at some points, but never really came close to finishing it. So that was it. Dominant win for Ilir Latifi because Olenek didn't really get anything going. Sad to see. And yeah, and I don't really know what they're going to do with either one of these guys anymore, to be honest. Because, they kept giving Olenek fights because, yeah, he's got 60 wins in MMA, which is absurd. So I guess they wanted to, just keep giving him fights that he could, potentially win fairly easily with his submissions. So, I just don't know. I don't know how many times we're going to see him again. I just can't see us seeing him anymore. Like maybe one more fight. That's probably about it. He even said himself he's doesn't really feel that fire for fighting anymore, or even really for MMA anymore. Like he didn't even really seem to want to coach either. It was just kind of like, I need to take a break from MMA in general. That's kind of what it sounded like from what I remember. So I don't know. And for Latifi as well, it's like he kind of got lucky with his matchup here because I just don't think there's too many people that he can beat in the heavyweight division anymore. It's just not, his way of winning with grappling and just basically controlling people. It's not going to work against the younger people, especially the people that can hit a lot harder, the people that are more technically good, let's say. I mean, he is good. He is tech skilled and everything like that, but it's the speed, the strength, the power, the skill, the IQ of all these younger fighters now, especially in the heavyweight division coming up. I just don't see that there's a whole lot left for either one of these guys. And I hate to say it, but yeah, because I actually really like Olenek. Latifi, but Olenek, I really like. I love the style. I love watching the grappling. But yeah, I just don't think that either one of them is gonna be around much longer, which is sad to say. But after that, John Castaneda, Daniel Santos. I had Castaneda going into this, and he was the favorite. And you know what? He was doing pretty well at the start of this fight. The first round, very much Castaneda. And so I was, again, feeling pretty good at the start of this fight. But that quickly turned around in the second round. So, yeah, the first round landed multiple knockdowns. So I was like, oh, this is in the bag. This is in the bag at this point. He's doing fantastic, getting all these knockdowns, dominating him. Could have even really been a 10-8, to be honest. Well, maybe not. I don't know about a 10-8, but it was pretty dominant. He landed a lot of huge shots that threatened multiple finishes here for Castaneda. Still, somehow Santos made it out of the round, got into the second round, and he knew he needed to do something big here, obviously. Castaneda got an awkward groin strike there at the start of the second. And right after that, he ran in for another takedown. Couldn't really hold Santos down, though. And this actually allowed Santos to finally get something going. And then it was actually Santos who started to grapple. Didn't find success on the ground either, but it really started to heat up Um, as Santos kind of started to shred Castaneda apart on the feet. Just completely different the second round. And it looked as though we were going to see a final round. It really did. And then eventually, Santos kept going, relentless with the striking, and eventually dropped Castaneda to his knees for a second round finish. Amazing come from behind win. That I think, yeah, that actually ended being that ended up being not just the KO of the night, but it was actually also the brawl of the night as well. Because there really weren't a lot of interesting fights on the night, but we can talk about that debrief right at the end there. But yeah, amazing fight to watch. Very exciting. You love those back and forth ones, knockdowns on both sides. Crazy. And then we're at the main card now. Mike Davis, Vyacheslav Borshov. Excuse me. And this was, like I said, I did get the entire main card right. So clearly I got this one right. But I think going into it, because Borshov started off so hot with his first couple of performances in front of the crowd, the Contender Series, then his debut and all that. Amazing performances in that. And then, we saw the huge gaping hole in his game that Jacasey took advantage of with the grappling. Jacasey literally just just basically grappled him into the canvas for in the last fight, pretty much 15 minutes straight of grappling, dominated him on the ground, and Borshov didn't really get a chance to do anything. And I knew that Davis was capable of the same thing. So I figured he was going to be doing the same thing, a lot of grappling with, obviously some striking thrown in there because he is more so a striker, but he's well rounded enough that I figured he was probably going to do the same thing as Jacasey. And when he did end up going for the takedowns, he did get them and he did dominate him. I don't really know why he didn't do that more often. I think that was a little bit of an oversight from Davis himself. Weird strategy in terms of that. And I think actually even the corners were kind of wondering why, from what I remember, I think they were kind of wondering why he wasn't going to the ground more, because he was dominating him down there. And I know that the commentators were thinking what I was thinking. They even mentioned it themselves. Seems a little weird that he didn't go for the grappling more. But that being said, still easily won the fight. And it ended up being 29-28, 29-26, and 29-26 for Davis. Not going to lie, I didn't think it was that dominant. I think it's actually a little absurd to give 2 10-8 rounds to Davis for that. Definitely did not see it that dominant, and I don't really see how you could. I also saw it 29-28 personally. Because I thought the first round, all the rounds were fairly close. Borshov wasn't completely blown out of the water in any of those rounds. So I thought that was a little bit weird. And really the one round that he won, I mean, it was, again, only because Davis really didn't go for that grappling. He was just kind of keeping it on the feet there. Yeah. What else was there? Yeah, and I mean, that was the other thing in the third round, actually. I mean, the problem with him staying on his feet there is it gave Borshov the chance. And he was actually doing fairly well on the feet, Borshov, because he ended up, I don't know if he broke his orbital or what, but the vision of Davis clearly compromised. His eye was puffing out quite a bit. I mean, clearly something was broken up there. Clearly it was a problem. And, it's like, if you were smarter about the way you were fighting, going for the grappling more, that wouldn't have, that probably wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, a little bit of a weird fight IQ there, I guess, weird strategy there. And again, I think the corners were also kind of questioning it. So I don't think that was really the game plan. I think the game plan was to kind of grapple more. So I'm not really sure why he didn't do that. Little weird, but anyway, like I said, clearly dominantly won. Just took a little bit too much damage that he really didn't have to take. Then we had what I thought was the most impressive performance of the night. Clear bonus deserver. Sodiq Yusuff, Don Shanis. I mean, I said this last week going into it. I said it right away. I mean, this is not going to be close. I even said, I was like, first round probably is what's going to happen here. I was thinking KO. I mean, clearly, because Yusuff is for sure mostly a knockout artist. But we saw a whole brand new side to Sodiq Yusuff on this one. I mean, it was a 30-second fight, so I'll just get right into it. In fact, it was so short. You never really see this happen, but it was so short of a fight that they actually replayed the entire fight for us to watch after it was done. That's how short it was. So yeah, Shanis walked straight in. Was already getting lit up by knees. And then interestingly, Yusuff went for a submission right away, locked it in. I think probably because Shanis did not see it coming at all, was expecting striking the whole match probably. And then that was it. Locked it in, grabbed the win with the submission, and that was it. By the way, second fastest? I don't know if that's right. I think that might have been fourth fastest, actually. But I wrote down here, which is plausible, the second fastest submission in featherweight history. I mean, like that was clearly submission of the night. Obvious bonus. Interestingly, did not get a bonus from the UFC. I was a little surprised about that because I was like, okay, well, that's, I would think, a clear bonus. I guess because of the competition wasn't necessarily, the Shanis necessarily isn't necessarily that good. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's why he didn't get the bonus, but still, I mean, he's only ever gotten KO finish. This is his first submission win ever. And he got it in 30 seconds, and it was one of the fastest submissions in the division's history. So to me, that's a bonus. I gave him the submission bonus for that. Incredible, incredible performance. And by the way, that should scare the shit out of any other featherweight that's even close to this guy in the rankings, because that is impressive, because he is already a very, very good striker. And now we find out that he is also very, very good on the ground. So I would be scared if I was a featherweight. And you know what? There's a lot of good featherweights out there, but a lot of specialists in the featherweight division of the UFC right now. So somebody who's well-rounded like that, you got to watch out for him. That's all I'm saying. I think he's looking really good. And I don't really see anybody really calling him out either. I think they realize how good he is. So, you got to look out for this guy. He's looking really, really good. Next up, Raoni Barcelos, Trevin Jones. I was going Barcelos by decision on this one. I thought that was fairly clear. I mean, neither one of them really gets a whole lot of finishes. They end in a lot of decisions. Their styles also kind of fit that kind of result in this case, because they're both kind of more so, I mean, Barcelos does have the ground game, of course, too, but, they're both usually in stand-up battles in this case. But of course, Barcelos knew that he was going to have the grappling advantage, and that is exactly what he took advantage of. So that is what he started to do. Went for a takedown, didn't get the first one, but landed quite a few good combos, and then finally got the takedown there. Started to work for submissions, didn't get it, but clearly won the opening round thanks to that. And this is exactly why I picked him. I knew he was more well-rounded. Also, I know how good he is too. I've seen him fight quite a bit, so I know how good he is. And Trevin Jones hasn't necessarily been as impressive. That's the other reason why I picked him. But anyway, second round. Barcelos kept that pressure going, landing all these combos at will. I mean, he was really doing well on the feet there. And Jones really wasn't throwing anything. He really wasn't being all that active, throwing much out there. And that's how you slow down somebody like Barcelos. You got to throw something back at them so that they're a little bit hesitant to kind of go in. You got to do something, or else they're just gonna walk right over you. Um, and yeah, Jones just wasn't really necessarily doing that. He had only landed 9 strikes in the entire fight up until about halfway into the second round. So that should really tell you the lack of activity and how dominant Barcelos was up until this point. And then Barcelos actually ended up dropping Jones to the canvas with a knockdown. Did not go for the submissions there, but was landing some heavy, heavy ground and pound. And Jones already getting destroyed by this ground and pound. His hair had actually changed colors at that point. It was dyed like a whitish blonde before, and it was looking a little red by the end of the second round there. The third round, pretty much the exact same thing. Dragged him down to the ground again. More dominance from Barcelos. Fairly easy win right there, which is, I thought it was going to be a little bit closer. I really did. I thought Trevin Jones looked a lot better than that in the other fights, so I figured it was going to be a little bit closer, but not surprised by the outcome, that's for sure. And again, you really got to pay attention to Barcelos. That's another guy you really need to look out for, because he is very, very well rounded. Endless cardio, just impressive. Impressive. That's all I got to say. Co-main after that, Randy Brown, Francisco Trinaldo. Once again, a fairly significant favorite in Brown. I thought that was pretty justified. I didn't really think this was going to be all that close. All I knew is I was pretty sure there was not going to be a finish in this one, because Brown, I don't think he's going to get finished by Trinaldo, and Trinaldo doesn't ever really doesn't get knocked out. I don't think he's ever been knocked out. And he is the kind of person that could get submitted, but Brown, not really a submission kind of guy. So to me, decision made a lot of sense here. And well, that's exactly what we saw again here. Pretty dominant by Brown. Trinaldo not really thrown off by the length at first. Started to get a lot of kicks going. And a couple of them actually swept out the legs of Brown, so he was doing pretty well with the kicks, but Brown wasn't really phased, and then landed a huge one, knocked Trinaldo flat on his back there. Interestingly, bit of a weird choice, honestly. Brown could have probably gone for a finish right away there. I'm not even kidding. He really could have, or at least threatened something, gotten some more damage going, but instead of jumping on him when he was on his back, he just watched him, just looked at him, and Trinaldo got back up. So huge missed opportunity there. That's not really something that you should keep doing. I think there's a chance he was probably avoiding the submission game, the ground game of Trinaldo, similar to like somebody like Oliveira, with what Gaethje, or was that Poirier? I think it was Poirier that started to do that. He got the knockdowns and then was just like, I'm not getting anywhere close to you when you're on your back. So maybe that's what Brown was doing here. Not the worst idea, but also it's like you had him hurt pretty bad. You definitely could have, gone in with the ground and pound. I'm sure he would have been fine. But anyway, just being safer, maybe that's what was going on here. I'm not really sure what he was thinking there, but anyway, a little bit weird. Then that actually let Trinaldo actually go for a takedown, wrapped his entire body around him. And then Brown actually finished the round with a beautiful submission attempt. Yeah, and Brown was clearly ahead. So and that actually kind of just tells you right there that I don't really know what was going on with why he didn't jump on top of Trinaldo there. Because like I said, he actually ended up going for a submission attempt later in that exact same round. So clearly didn't necessarily feel a whole lot of danger on the ground to that extent. So yeah, it was definitely weird of him not to jump and take advantage of that one. But anyway, still clearly won the round anyway. Second round Brown turned up the pace, lots of jabs and lots of kicks. Trinaldo really starting to struggle with the length of Brown at that point. He was landing some good ones, but then was getting countered really hard by Brown, of course, because I mean, especially if you're not the quickest or if you're not really going like threatening the ground, like a takedown at that point, like you're in close at that point with somebody who has a massive reach advantage. So, of course, he was starting to land huge counters on there. And that was really starting to be a problem. And then, as expected, Trinaldo was started to go for those takedowns again. Never really ended up getting it. He did get some good control time along the fence and ended up making it a little bit of a closer round, but and it really could have gone either way. I went I actually yeah, I actually didn't write down my opinion on that one. I think I kind of thought Brown was getting it because it was a little bit close, and then well, Trinaldo never really did a whole lot of damage, so I was kind of leaning towards Brown on that one, but it was pretty close, and I could have seen a couple of judges going the other way with that. The third round, Brown kept that pace going, eventually dropped on his back by a pretty crazy kick, a leg kick there. And with that, Trinaldo actually ended up finding himself on top, dominated Brown on the ground. And this is kind of maybe why, maybe that was why Brown was a little hesitant in that first round because of exactly what happened here. Yeah, then he landed quite a bit of ground and pound, a lot of submission attempts for Trinaldo, I should point out. Clearly winning that round. So pretty obvious third round for Trinaldo there. So really, it actually could have gone either way on this one. It really could have gone either way on the scorecards. I agreed that it should have been Brown 29-28, and that is the way that all the judges went. But like I said, I could have seen Trinaldo getting the win on you get some weird judges, you get different scorecards here and there. I could have easily seen it going the other way. But I'm glad it didn't because this makes way more sense. Anyway, main event now. Mackenzie Dern, Xiaonan. I had Yan by decision on this one because honestly, I've been way more impressed with Yan lately. I mean, she got the split decision over loss to Marina Rodriguez, I should say. Rodriguez. While Mackenzie Dern fairly significantly beat. It was really not that close when they fought. When she ended up getting the takedown, she kind of got it going. But other than that, Rodriguez kind of just dominated. And that's basically what I thought was going to happen here too. I mean, Yan has struggled with takedowns in the past, but I know that the gym that she goes to, they're so intense and they're so smart about how they work towards things that I knew the takedown defense was going to be there, which is exactly what I said last time. So I figured, okay, Dern is probably going to land a couple of those takedowns throughout the fight, and she's probably going to win, a couple of rounds on the cards thanks to those takedowns. But I also knew that Yan is far and away way better on the feet. So I figured, especially with her cardio too, that was going to be the huge problem for Dern, and that she was going to struggle with that and eventually end up losing the decision because of all that output on the feet. And then, of course, those shutdown takedowns. And I was 100% accurate. So I cashed in good on the underdog money there. And I hope some people did as well, that listened to this part of it and got the money down there, because she was a fairly significant underdog. She was like plus 100. No, it might have even been plus 200 something. It was definitely way more one-sided than it should have been, and I did say that last week. But anyway, we'll go through the whole fight. Yan overwhelming Dern with the striking early. Very careful not to get too close, though, of course, because of those takedowns. And Dern was rushing in with those combos. A little bit reckless, but of course, she didn't care. She wanted those takedowns. So you got to do what you got to do to get those takedowns because that's really her only chance. And she knew that. And Jan knew that too. Eventually, Dern did finally get close enough to clinch for a takedown. And she was very close to getting it, but Jan defended perfectly. And as the round was closing, somehow Jan was actually the one who found herself in the dominant position on the ground. And really, rounds like that could go either way because Dern had a couple of moments in there with the clinch work and then a little bit of damage. But again, I gave it to Jan. But with all those takedown attempts, because that's really what it was, I could see some judges giving it to Dern, but personally, I also had it for Jan. And I think that's actually how most of the judges had it. I did not look at the scorecard after, but I would imagine just mathematically that's how it would have worked out. Second round, Jan opened up with I think it was a knockdown. I said a possible knockdown here because honestly, it wasn't clear if she got a knockdown or if Dern kind of just slipped while she was being hit. I'm not really sure what happened there. Either way, either way, Jan kind of backed up a little bit, trying to avoid that grappling of Dern. Dern grabbed the legs though and dragged her down. And that was starting to be a problem because if you can get a takedown like that, then it's like, okay, well, we got 3 rounds left on the clock here. So, it's starting to look rough. These takedown defense might not hold up. I wasn't sure. It was a good fight. It was a close fight back and forth because of those. Anyway, then Dern started to work. And Jan was still defending well, but Dern was really going hard for these submissions here. Especially, I don't know what it's called. I think it's like an omoplata or something like that. Or maybe actually, no, it could have been a Kimura. I'm not really sure. I can't remember how it played out and I didn't write it down. But she did have Jan's arm behind her back pretty deep and eventually actually switched over to a pretty deep arm triangle as well. It was looking pretty rough for Jan, I gotta say, but she did very, very well to defend. And honestly, especially after this fight, I don't think anybody should question her ability to defend submissions anymore because that was wildly impressive to do what she did. Anyway, but that being said, of course, with Dern getting that many moments, submissions and takedowns and control time and all that, close to winning the fight from the submissions, seemed to be 1-1 to me. I think that was pretty fair. What was I going to say? The third round, Dern actually pulled guard. And not really that surprisingly. It makes sense. You got to get your submission game going any way you can. So if that means you're on the bottom, go for it. And that is exactly what she did. And did end up getting the takedown like that. But this time, Jan actually did get up pretty quickly. But Jan looked like she was starting to slow down. So I was actually starting to get a little bit worried that she might not be able to defend these takedowns anymore, especially in a 5-round fight. If you're starting to slow down against somebody who is relentless with submissions and takedowns, you're going to have a problem. If your cardio isn't there, you're going to have a problem. But her cardio was there and she kept going. Anyway, then Jan had the first big moment since the first round, wobbled the legs of Dern with a huge shot that landed right on the chin. And to me, because of that damage, because of that one, and then a little bit earlier too, I think she clearly got the round on the cards there. So 2-1 for Jan after the third one there. Then the fourth round, Jan definitely was slowing down. Dern kept going for the takedowns there. Still though, Jan was still fresh enough to shut those takedowns down and then go back to the striking, picking Dern apart. So seemed to maybe get a second win there. I don't know. Maybe taking it easy the second and third round so that she wouldn't gas herself out. But yeah, definitely really started to pick it up in the fourth and the fifth rounds there. Dern relentless with the takedown attempts, but was shut down almost every single time. She did finally grab a takedown near the end of the round. Dern did, uh, but had her back on the canvas, and clearly had lost that round. I would say, because all the takedowns were shut down. So Dern not really doing any damage. Jan defending well, and then of course uh getting some own things, getting a lot of her own damage going, especially in the striking. So for me, it's pretty clear 3-1 at that point. uh yeah, yeah, I was trying to work out my score that way, but yeah, no. Yeah, I had Dern down 3-1 on this one. Then that's when it got interesting, the fifth round. Dern came in really looking for a finish here. She knew her corners were telling her that the entire time she needed to get a finish, needed to do something crazy here. Throwing out a wild combo, pushed Jan into the fence. This time, she finally found herself on top of Jan, because most of the other times when she was on the ground, she was on the bottom. And although she was, going for those submissions, a lot harder to win a fight when you're on the bottom. So yeah, she finally found herself on top this time in the final round there, working for submissions with 4 minutes left on the clock. Jan was defending pretty well, but I mean, Dern was absolutely relentless with ground and pound and submission attempts. And with 15 seconds left, Jan's arm slipped into a pretty bad spot, deep, deep into an armbar. And it really looked like that was going to end right there. But Jan somehow slipped out of it and survived the round, survived the fight. And I'm not going to lie, I had it as a tie. I had it as a tie after this, because although I had it 3-1 going into the final round, I actually thought that Dern had earned a 10-8, a fairly clear 10-8, I would say, on the cards in the final round there. So to me, I actually did have this as a draw, and one of the judges also had it as a draw, 47-47, but the other two had it 48-47, 48-47 for Jan. And of course, that was because of the scoring of the last round, which would mean that one of them did give a 10-8, making it 47-47, and the other two did not, making it 48-47 for both of them. And you know what? There's an argument there for either way. But I would say, again, because of how dominant it was and how close she was to finishing the fight a couple of times, I think a 10-8 would have been pretty fair. So like I said, I scored it a draw. But, if you were going to pick a winner, I would have picked Jan because of, she won 3 out of the 5 rounds and did pretty well. So, yeah, and that was it. That was it. So I went 0-3, 0-3 on the prelims that I picked out, but 5-0 on the main card ones I picked out. What can you do? A little bit weird. Anyway, Daniel Santos, KO of the night. That was the knee in that crazy fight between John Castaneda, Daniel, and Daniel Santos. That's the way I went with the KO. The sub, I thought it was pretty obviously Sodiq Yusuff. I mean, 30-second submission there. Unbelievable. So I thought that was a pretty clear bonus. And like I said, they did not give him a bonus. They gave Chelsea Chandler a bonus. They gave Daniel Santos a bonus. They made John Castaneda versus Daniel Santos the fight of the night. And I want to say that I'm pretty sure they did give Guido Cannetti also a bonus. So there were 4 bonuses, but they did not give one to Sodiq Yusuff. I don't really know why. It seems a little weird to me, but anyway, whatever. 30-second win. Clearly the best submission of the night. I gave that to Sodiq Yusuff. And like I said, just like the UFC, I also picked John Castaneda and Daniel Santos for Brawl of the Night. Because really, I mean, there were only really two semi-interesting fights that actually lasted past the first round. Because I don't really want to give a fight of the night bonus to a fight that didn't even last the full round. I've only done that once, and I can't see myself doing it that often, like maybe once or twice a year I'm going to do that. And this is not one of those cases. Well, actually, yeah. So the second round, I mean, I don't even really usually go into this 2-round fights, but I did with this one because it was definitely the most entertaining fight of the night. And I mean, really the second most entertaining in my mind was the main event with Dern and Jan. And there just wasn't really necessarily a whole lot of action going on, enough to dethrone John Castaneda and Daniel Santos. So to me, I thought it made sense with this one. Most valuable fighter, like I said, Guido Cannetti, and it's the second fight in a row I've given this to him for the exact same reason. Like I said, proved everybody completely wrong. First round finish again, same thing he did last time, and 42. So again, pretty impressive, wildly impressive actually. And still very much dangerous. Still making statements at 42. Yeah. And that's it. That is it for the card. That is it for UFC Vegas 61. And that is it for me. Oh, look at that. We ended right at pretty much right in an hour deep, which is a little bit longer than I thought this was going to be, but that's okay. Anyway, so next week you've got UFC Vegas 62, which again is Alexa Grasso and somebody who I cannot remember the name of right now. I feel bad, but I cannot remember the name. Anyway, that's next week. And I'm not sure, but I know that BFL, Battlefield Fight League, is soon. I think it might be next week, but honestly, I can't remember. So, well, we won't be talking about that next week, but it possibly could be happening next week. So that might be something that we talk about a couple weeks from now. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, these are going to definitely be shorter episodes from now on because we have no more Contender Series. And of course, I'm going to keep the recaps fairly brief and then the predictions also fairly brief. So instead of going like 2 hours on a regular basis, we'll be going to like maybe an hour and a half each week. And then, of course, actually, until Battlefield Fight League comes again, and then that'll probably be a longer one because then you've got 3 cards again. Anyway, that is enough for me. If you want to check out everything else we've got, Area 51 has got you covered. They've got the other sports. I'm the MMA guy here, of course. And you can follow all the social media stuff below. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, that is all linked below. And as well as the site, of course, also linked below. And that's it. That is it for me. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. We're back in this lovely place. So I think the shows are also going to go a lot smoother. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.